Picture this. You wake up, and before your feet even hit the floor, your hand is already reaching for your phone. Sound familiar? You scroll through endless feeds, searching for that next hit of dopamine, a like, a comment, anything to fill the growing void inside. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What if I told you that this isn't freedom? What if everything you believe about choice, happiness, and modern life is actually the most sophisticated form of control ever devised?
Nearly a century ago, Aldous Huxley wrote a book that wasn't just fiction, it was a prophecy. And today, we're living in his brave new world, except we don't even realize we're the ones being controlled. See, while George Orwell warned us about Big Brother watching us, Huxley predicted something far more terrifying. A world where we wouldn't need to be watched because we'd be too entertained to care. A world where slavery wouldn't require chains because we'd love our servitude. Look around you right now. What do you see? Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you sat in complete silence for more than 5 minutes? No phone, no music, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. If that idea makes you uncomfortable, you're not alone. We've been conditioned to fear that silence, to fill every moment with stimulation. But why? Neil Postman, the brilliant media critic, saw this coming decades ago. In Amusing Ourselves to Death, he wrote, "What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one." Think about that for a moment. We're not being forced to avoid deep thinking, we're choosing to avoid it. In Huxley's world, citizens took a drug called soma whenever they felt uncomfortable. One dose, and all anxiety, sadness, or existential questions simply disappeared. But we don't have soma, right? Wrong. We have something even more powerful. Infinite scroll. We have Netflix algorithms that know exactly what will keep you watching. We have social media platforms designed by teams of neuroscientists to be as addictive as possible. Every notification is a hit of dopamine. Every swipe is a gamble. Every like is validation. And just like soma, these digital drugs don't solve our problems. They just make us forget we have them. The average person checks their phone 96 times a day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. Tell me, is that freedom or addiction? But how did we get here? How did an entire generation become so dependent on external validation and instant gratification? The answer lies in what psychologists call operant conditioning, the same principle used to train lab rats. Except in this case, we're the rats, and the entire digital economy is the maze. B.F. Skinner, the father of behavioral psychology, discovered that intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards, creates the strongest addiction patterns. He wrote, "The way positive reinforcement is carried out is more important than the amount." Sound familiar? That's exactly how social media works. You don't know when you'll get that next like, that next comment, that next dopamine hit. So you keep checking, keep scrolling, keep hoping. Think about your daily routine. You wake up and immediately check your phone. Why? Because overnight something might have happened. Someone might have liked your post. You might have missed something important. But here's the trap. Nothing you see in those first few minutes of scrolling is actually urgent. Yet it feels urgent because you've been trained to believe it is. This conditioning doesn't start with social media. It begins much earlier. Our education system teaches us to seek external validation through grades, not internal satisfaction through learning. Our job market rewards compliance, not creativity. Our culture celebrates consumption, not contemplation. We're not born addicted to stimulation. We're trained to be. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Huxley understood something profound about human nature. Constant pleasure doesn't make us happy. It makes us weak. In Brave New World, citizens lived in a state of perpetual contentment. No pain, no struggle, no growth. And what was the result? A society of beautiful, empty shells. Humans who had lost everything that made them human. Look at our culture today.
We've been sold the idea that happiness is the ultimate goal, that any discomfort should be immediately eliminated. Feeling sad, here's a funny video. Feeling anxious, here's a shopping app. Feeling lonely, here's a dating app with infinite options. But what happens when we never learn to sit with discomfort? What happens when we never develop resilience? Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, made a profound observation in Man's Search for Meaning. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Frankl discovered that those who survived the camps weren't necessarily the physically strongest. They were those who found meaning in their suffering, who maintained a sense of purpose even in the darkest circumstances. But our culture has inverted this wisdom. Instead of finding meaning in difficulty, we're taught to avoid difficulty altogether. Instead of building strength through struggle, we seek comfort through consumption. The result? An entire generation that crumbles at the first sign of real challenge. A society that mistakes pleasure for happiness and comfort for freedom. So if constant pleasure is a trap, what's the alternative? The answer is to understand the difference between pleasure and purpose, between happiness and meaning. Pleasure is external, temporary, and ultimately empty. It requires constant renewal because it never truly satisfies. Purpose, on the other hand, is internal, lasting, and deeply fulfilling. It doesn't need to be constantly fed because it feeds itself. Think about the most meaningful moments of your life. Were they moments of pure pleasure, or were they moments of growth, connection, and achievement? Chances are, they involved some degree of difficulty, some element of struggle. Learning a skill is hard work, but mastering it brings lasting satisfaction. Building a relationship requires vulnerability and effort, but deep connections enrich our lives in ways that casual encounters never could. Creating something meaningful, art, a business, a family, involves sacrifice and struggle, but the result is something that outlasts any temporary pleasure. But here's the problem. A society of people pursuing purpose is much harder to control than a society of people pursuing pleasure. People with purpose ask difficult questions. They resist manipulation. They can't be bought with cheap distractions. That's why the system works so hard to keep you distracted, to keep you seeking the next hit of dopamine rather than asking what you're really living for. So how do you break free? How do you escape this beautiful prison of perpetual entertainment? First, you need to practice what I call strategic deprivation. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit. It means consciously choosing when and how you engage with addictive stimuli. Try this. Pick one day a week to go completely offline. No social media, no streaming, no constant input. Just you, your thoughts, and the real world. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, even painful. That discomfort is your addiction talking. Push through it. Second, rebuild your tolerance for boredom. Boredom isn't the enemy. It's the space where creativity lives, where deep thoughts emerge, where you actually get to know yourself. When you feel that urge to reach for your phone, pause. Ask yourself, what am I trying to avoid? What am I afraid to feel? Often the answer will surprise you. Third, develop what I call digital literacy. Not just the ability to use technology, but the ability to recognize when technology is using you. Ask yourself, who benefits from my attention? What am I giving up when I give in to distraction? Finally, and most importantly, start asking the big questions. What matters to me? What do I want to build? How do I want to be remembered? These aren't easy questions, but they're the only ones that truly matter. The choice is yours. You can continue living in Huxley's brave new world, entertained into submission, distracted into compliance. Or you can choose the harder path, the path of consciousness, of purpose, of real freedom. But I warn you, once you see the cage, you can't unsee it. Once you taste real freedom, you'll never be satisfied with its counterfeit again. The question isn't whether you're free. The question is whether you're brave enough to find out. What will you choose?